Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have a dozen articles for you, and all the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Microsoft slams NSA for tools that caused global malware epidemic. This article originally came off of Zero Hedge. It says, in early April, when we reported that the hacker group known as the Shadow Brokers had released the password top secret arsenal of tools that allowed anyone to backdoor into virtually any computer system in what it claimed was a protest of Trump's betrayal, few people noticed. The entire world did notice when an unknown group of hackers reportedly used the same set of NSA-created tools to launch a global malware cyber attack using the WannaCry ransomware virus, holding at least 200,000 computer systems around the globe hostage and demanding a payment of 300 in Bitcoin to unlock infected computers, or else threatening to wipe out host machine. The crippling global attack prompted Europol to warn that Monday could be a dark day for an unknown number of Windows XP-based systems, which could simply fail to start, leading to massive productivity losses around the globe, while others predicted that the spread of the worm could accelerate the coming days once the hackers bypassed the temporary measure that prevented further distribution of the worm over the weekend. In the afternoon, Microsoft itself got involved in a global hacking scandal and criticized the NSA for its role in spreading the WannaCry epidemic. Specifically, the tech giant urged governments to use and store their cyber responsibly. We have seen vulnerabilities stored by the CIA show up on WikiLeaks, and now this vulnerability stolen from the NSA has affected customers around the world. Microsoft President and Chief Legal Officer Brad Smith wrote in a blog post this afternoon. This attack provides yet another example of why the stockpiling of vulnerabilities by governments is such a problem. Ahead of the Shadow Brokers leak hacking tools, Microsoft had released a patch against the vulnerability 1 month prior on March the 14th, which indicates that the company was notified by the U.S. intelligence agency that their tools using that particular backdoor had been compromised. However, the older unsupported operating systems, such as Windows XP, were not included in the update to millions of users who do not update their systems regularly. As a result, the WannaCry malware infected more than 200,000 unpatched computers and was threatening to spread to countless more as the hackers further weaponized their virus. Needless to say, Microsoft was not happy. Then I have is off of BizPack Review. As soon as the hamster catches up here. He's running as fast as he can go. Okay, this says, Hero, 22-year-old, finds kill switch for global cyber attack. Trump orders emergency meeting after chilling warning. An extensive worldwide cyber attack was stopped in its tracks by a 22-year-old British cybersecurity researcher. Using a simple domain registration, the attack had affected a large number of the major government, financial, and health service networks in North and South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and Australia. The attack, which was an attempt to extort millions from the affected entities, was stopped when the researcher, identified only as Malware Tech, discovered the kill switch and put an end to the scheme. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert to hold an emergency meeting Friday night to assess the threat posed by a global computer ransomware attack in at least 150 countries, a senior administration official told Reuters, according to the Jerusalem Post. In a blog post describing the incident, Malware Tech said he first became aware of the attack when the UK's national health system became affected his vacation. I made it a total of 4 days without working, so there's that, he said. He continued, saying, when about 2:30, the threat sharing platform was flooded with posts about the various NHS systems all across the country being hit, which was what tipped me off to the fact that this was something big. Although ransomware on a public sector system isn't even newsworthy, systems being hit simultaneously across the country, contrary to popular belief, most NHS employees don't open phishing emails, which suggested that something to be this widespread, it would have to be propagated using another method. I was quickly able to get a sample of the malware with the help of Caffeine, a good friend and fellow researcher. Upon running the sample in my analysis environment, I instantly noticed it queried an unregistered domain, which I promptly registered. But malware, try that again. But malware tech, I am independent researcher, wasn't working alone on this one. He's part of a global cybersecurity community. Darren Huss, 28-year-old Western Michigan engineer for Proofpoint, was also working furiously on the problem. Huss noticed that the extorters left a kill switch in their coding and shared it on Twitter. That brought the two of them together. This was what the pair had discovered, that registering the domain name and redirecting the attacks to Maltech's server had activated the kill switch, halting the ransomware's infections, Fox News reported. Eventually, the entire cybersecurity community, including Huss, described malware tech the hero in the incident. I think the security industry as a whole should be considered heroes, Huss said, but also cautioned others that the criminals could relaunch the extortion scheme, kill switch, or a better hidden one. I think it is concerning that we could definitely see a similar attack occur, maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours, or maybe in the next week or two, Huss said. It could be very possible. Those outside the cybersecurity community also gave their thumbs up. The article. This is off a town hall. It says liberals are an inferno of flaming crazy, and we should pour gasoline on the fire. Pity the Democrats to the extent that you can without bursting into hysterical laughter at their agony. America has thoroughly rejected them in every branch of the federal government, and on top of that, they were utterly humiliated by the guy they all claimed was a complete moron. Question: what does that make the sanctimonious harpy he crushed in the Electoral College? They still haven't realized what's going on. They're ego-driven to the dominant normal people and shape us into new socialist non-gender beings. It has blinded them to reality. We think they, along with their minions in the media in Hollywood and on campus, suck. They are baffled at our refusal to acknowledge their moral, intellectual, and political superiority. It just doesn't compute. Well, compute this, Gibos. You look nuts. I mean wacko, zonked out. Hey, that goldfish is firing a mind control laser at my brain and making me break dance. Nuts. But don't stop. No, pump it up. You're at 11. I say take it to 12. This is great. All this insanity is going to help us normals retain power, from your gyno hat marches to the fake hate crimes, your insistence that the Russians are responsible for everything from Hillary losing the election to the rarely discussed but well-known liberal epidemic of ED. Here's a little test. It's been about 6 months since Trump treated the smartest, most accomplished woman in the world like a Nordic track treats Harry Reid. And does anyone, even one person, who has said, you know, I voted for Trump, but now after Neil Gorsuch, General Mattis, and H.R. McMaster, I really wish I had checked the box for the Bond pantsuit. I'm not talking about all alt-right weirdos. They don't count. I mean, literally. Unless they remove their off-brand Nike knockoffs, I mean, normal people. And now saying something remotely like this, I regret Hillary pick a SCOTUS judge who thinks the Constitution bans guns but mandates taxpayer subsidies transsexual abortions. Wow, that 70-degree drop in illegal alien entries into America and all those deportations of the MS-13 guys are depriving the country of valuable, productive future Democrat voters. Gosh, I hate so much how Trump has paid attention to that sliver of our country lying between 995. It was Ashley Judd's V-Cap slam poetry combined with Bill Nye's sex confusion clip that convinced me liberals back in power. No one who voted for Trump has ever said any of those things. Oh, they might have voted for him reluctantly, but no statistically significant slice of them wish they hadn't. But the Democrats work under the assumption that such folks exist and are receptive to their tantrums. Good. These liberals are crazy and they're stupid. And we totally need to encourage them to keep doing crazy, stupid things. Are supposed to be terrified by polls that say that the House could flip to the Dems in 2018. Clinton about how the liberal wish casting multiplier effect on the polls worked for her. But the fact is that we have 18 months to go. On the Democrat side, it looks to be 18 months of kookiness that will leave us normals scratching our heads and snickering. Yes, I know that just this morning I was saying Comey should have been fired, but then Trump actually did it, and his doing what I suggested is the worst constitutional crisis ever. Bombing Putin's ally was a cunning ploy to throw us all off the trail. Why, even though failed FBI Director Jim Comey, James MC Leakmaster J. Clapper, Diane Crypt Keeping It Real Feinstein, and even noted particle physicist Maxine Waters conceded that there's no evidence that Trump and Putin are breeding a collusive love child. I'm still convinced of the existence of this sweeping, enormous, and invisible conspiracy that occurred for some reason somehow, and about which absolutely zero evidence of Trump collusion has leaked out during 10 months of colonoscopy-esque, despite everything else leaking out. Sounds legit. Sure, Congress polls right around the popularity of the outhouse scuba diving and borrowing Charlie Sheen's toothbrush, but then who wants to live in a country where we like our politicians? It's not like in 2016. We were high-fiving these guys. We get that a GOP Congress is necessary evil, but we also get that a Democrat Congress is an unnecessary evil. And while these liberal spazzes and their fussy Friedcon gimps are shrieking about the coming Armageddon in their high-pitched girlish voices, Trump is just rolling along. Special prosecutor, he's not falling for it. And did you see the 10 judges he just nominated? You usually have to come up with roses and champagne to score like that. Here's how this goes. The Democrats, along with the media and Team Tinfoil, keep whining about Russians, turning them out, while they're babbling about some nonsense that means nothing outside the coastal loony bins. Normal people are tuning into how the stock market and the job market just keep getting better. How we're not taking guff from foreign creeps anymore. And we're not talking about how much taxes will go up, but about how much they'll go down. Is going to pass. Obamacare is getting repealed. It's as dead as in the Senate as it was in the House, which is not at all. Our military is getting rebuilt. We're going to stop leading with our chin on trade. Keep getting better and people will see it. The only way president can still screw this up is by choosing to screw this up. He won't do it by messing with liberals. Keep tweeting those twerps into a sputtering rage. It pays dividends every time he provokes them to new heights of lunacy. No, the president only fails by forgetting his conservative friends, and that is becoming a problem. Where are the hardcore cons at state and defense? He needs to get solid business leader Anthony Scaramucci into the White House, like we conservatives were promised. A guy who can raise 20 million might come in handy. Well, the motto for conservatives is no justice will it, no peace. Or being crazy, and it's a bad look. So let's keep helping them do it. We can pity them, laugh at them. The next article is off of Western Journalism. And I'm waiting for the hamster. It says Jeff Sessions issues get tough memo reversing Obama's sentencing policy. Now this is one I'm not sure I really agree with, but let's pull this up here. Get the hamster to cooperate a little bit. He's running in the wheel. Here we go. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has signaled the end of an Obama-era policy that favors giving the least possible jail time when prosecuting criminals. In a memo to all 94 U.S. attorneys, Sessions made a 180-degree departure from the Obama administration. The principle that prosecutors should charge and pursue the most serious, readily provable offense, Sessions said. The most serious offense are those that carry the most substantial guidelines sentence, including mandatory minimum sentences added. Sessions said the change in policy is needed to fulfill the Justice Department's obligation to the American people. The policy affirms our responsibility to enforce the law, is moral and just, and produces consistency. Utilizes the tools Congress has given us, he wrote. Our responsibility is to fulfill our role in a way that accords with the law, advances public safety, and promotes our legal system. It is of the utmost importance to enforce the law fairly and consistently. Charging and sentencing recommendations are crucial responsibilities for any federal prosecutor, Sessions said. Saying the directives I am setting forth below are simple but important. They place great confidence in our prosecutors and supervisors to apply them in a thoughtful and disciplined manner, with the goal of achieving just and consistent results in federal cases. Sessions has been calling for tougher actions against criminals for months. Aggressive prosecutions of federal law can be effective in combating crime, he said in March 8th memo, urging U.S. attorneys to target violent offenders. Are driven by drug trafficking and drug trafficking organizations. For this reason, disrupting and dismantling those drug organizations through prosecutions under the Controlled Substances Act, violent crimes down, he added. By consistently identifying the leading violent offenders in our communities and employing all available tools to hold them accountable, we will combat violent crime, Sessions wrote. Sessions this week also wiped away part of former Attorney General Eric Holder's Smart on Crime initiative, which aimed to reduce charges against nonviolent drug offenders who might otherwise receive mandatory minimum sentences. At a speech Thursday at the Opioid Abuse Summit in West Virginia, Sessions said that the nation needs tougher law enforcement. It is a big, crucial part of it. We're on a bad trend right now. We've got too much complacency about drugs, too much talk about recreational drugs, Sessions said. Criminal enforcement is crucial to stopping the violent transnational cartels that smuggle drugs across our borders and the thugs and gangs who bring this poison into our communities, he added. And where I'm coming up with a problem with this is if it is a violent crime, okay, throw the book at them. But we've got too many people in these for-profit prisons that taxpayers are paying for that shouldn't be there. Case in point would be the Hammonds. There's no violent crime there. Why the hell are those men still in prison? They should have never been convicted in the first place. They are not terrorists, and that whole thing was absolutely asinine. Then look at the Bundys and our patriots, and they haven't even been to court. The majority of them have been in jail for over a year. And if convicted, some of them will spend the rest of their lives in prison if they're convicted on the charges that they've been brought up on. What the hell for? They didn't do anything violent. They stood up for the Constitution and constitutional rights. So I've got a problem with the justice system, and I've got a problem with Sessions on this particular article. So there you have my opinion. The next one we have is off of Breitbart. As soon as the hamster gets it up here, he's running a little slow. There we go. Soros board member, create government version of Facebook to combat Breitbart. Okay. A media researcher who serves on the global board of billionaire George Soros Open Society Foundations has called for the creation of a public social media platform to counter an alleged right-wing media network anchored around Breitbart News. Ethan Zuckerman is director of the Center for Civic Media at MIT and serves as the principal research scientist at MIT's Media Lab. He is also a member of the global board of Soros Open Society Foundation. Zuckerman penned a piece in The Atlantic last week titled "The Case for Taxpayer-Supported Version of Facebook." A public social media platform would have the civic mission of providing us a diverse and global view of the world. Title of his missive. Zuckerman referred to a study he conducted last March that analyzed 1.25 million stories published during the 2016 election cycle and purportedly found a right-wing media network anchored around Breitbart developed as a distinct and insulated media system, media as a backbone to transmit a hyper-partisan perspective to the world. Without citing a single example in his Atlantic article, Zuckerman claimed that Breitbart served as the anchor of a media ecosystem of new, online-only outlets that mix propaganda and conspiracy theory news. Referring to media outlets within this self-described right-wing media ecosystem, Zuckerman claimed those outfits are not fake news in the usual sense of wholly fabricated articles written to earn online ad dollars, but hyperpartisanism, partially factual news. Once again, without citing any evidence, Zuckerman blamed his alleged echo chamber, try that again, this alleged echo chamber for taking a fringe position on ending legal immigration, making it central to 2016 presidential campaign, and ultimately for helping the candidate willing to support this position rise to the presidency. He posted that those who get news from the new rights echo chamber exist in a hermetically sealed online environment where such users often do not get news from outlets on the other side of the political spectrum. Zuckerman failed to note the massive distrust that the American public has in the establishment news media, which could be contributing to this alleged phenomenon. Instead, he warned that being able to escape echo chambers and encounter a wide picture of news may be a necessary precursor toward a functioning democracy. To note the left-leaning tendencies of public broadcasters like National Public Radio, Zuckerman claimed the best public broadcasters in strong democracies, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Germany, use their position to bring a wide range of perspectives and voices into the broader public dialogue. His solution to the so-called new right's echo chamber, anchored by Breitbart, is the creation of a public social media. Zuckerman often private platforms like Facebook are under no obligation to provide us a diverse worldview. It is more profitable to bring us baby pictures from our friends and political stories, or to isolate us in the bubble of ideology, comfortable information. They will. A public social media platform would have the civic mission of providing us a diverse and global view of the world. Resources on reporting, it would focus on aggregating and curating, pushing unfamiliar perspectives into our feeds, and nudging us away from the ideologically comfortable material we all gravitate toward. Zuckerman's study on the news patterns in 2016 presidential election seems to contradict an extensive study that found so-called fake news didn't signify impact the outcome of the election. It received a positive nod from Poynter Institute, the group helping Facebook determine whether certain news stories are disputed. The study, titled Social Media and Fake News in 2016 Election, was co-authored by economist Matthew Gensgau of Stanford University and Hunt Allicott of New York University. The paper utilized web browsing data, a database of what the authors claimed were fake news stories, and a 1,200-person online survey about news trends. By saying, our data suggests that social media were not the most important sources of election news, and even the most widely circulated fake news stories were seen a small fraction of Americans. For fake news to have changed the outcome of the election, a single fake news story would need to have convinced about 0.7% of Clinton voters and non-voters who saw it to shift their votes to Trump. A persuasion rate equivalent to seeing 36 television campaign ads. A project of Poynter, meanwhile, is the International Fact-Checking Network, IFCN, which drafted a code of 5 principles for news websites to accept. And Facebook explained that it will work with third-party fact-checking organizations that are signatories to the code of principles. Facebook says that if the fact-checking organizations determine that a certain story is fake, it will get flagged and disputed, and according to Facebook announcement, there will be a link to the corresponding article explaining why. Stories have been disputed may also appear lower in the news feed. Breitbart News reported that a cursory search of Poynter Institute website finds that Poynter's IFCN is openly funded by Soros Open Society Foundations, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Google, and the National Endowment for Democracy. Poynter's IFCN is also funded by the Omidyar Network, which is the nonprofit of liberal billionaire eBay founder Pierre. The Omidyar Network has partnered with Open Society on numerous projects and has given grants to third parties using the Soros-funded Tides Foundation. Tides is one of the largest donors to left-wing causes in the U.S. Omidyar also recently provided seed capital to the Anti-Defamation League, called the ADL, whose chief has baselessly smeared Breitbart News with claims of anti-Semitic associations for plans to build a Silicon Valley command center that says it is aimed at combating online hate. The next article is off of BizPac Review. See if the hamster can get this up here on the page for me. He seems to be having an issue. Let me see if I can rock his world a little bit here. Sometimes he just needs a little poke. Been notorious the last couple of weeks for running some kind of script on their site that the hamster has an issue with, and it takes a little prodding to get him to get over it and get it up here on the screen for me. The wheel moving, so that's a good sign. Here we go. NBC poll headline: Most Americans don't support Comey's firing as hogwash. Real results say a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll showed the majority of Americans either approved of or were indifferent to the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. That is not the way the mainstream media played it. Of those surveyed said they disapproved of the firing, whereas 29% approved, no opinion on it. 1% of Americans approve or have no opinion of what is done, and only 38% disapprove. How does the mainstream media spin that? They ignore the 32% that didn't care and tell the American people that most Americans disapproved Comey's firing. Support Comey's firing, a headline for Yahoo News blared. News. ABC News was better, but still negative, saying more Americans disapprove of Comey's firing than approve, poll shows. Its headline read. New York Daily News took similar tack with its headline that 29% approve of President Trump's firing James Comey. ABC News itself reported NBC WSJ poll 29% approve of Trump's firing of James Comey. On party lines, 58% of Republicans approved of Comey's firing. Percent of Democrats approved of the president's dismissal of the man they begged to have fired for months. The poll also showed that the most Republicans, the president fired Comey because of his decision charges against Hillary Clinton. 2% have no opinion on the firing, and 21% approved. Only 36% disapproved of Comey's ouster. Social media called the poll and its headlines fake news, and there's a bunch of tweets here that prove just that fact. You want to look at them. The next one is off of Breitbart. It says here, Donald Trump's trade representative confirmed on NAFTA. President Donald Trump has repeatedly thundered against NAFTA, promising a massive renegotiation of the trade deal, but his attempts are just getting started. Approved Robert Lighthizer for United States Trade Representative on Thursday, allowing the administration to begin fast-track trade discussions with Congress. The legislation was stalled in the Senate for 4 months, effectively freezing attempts from the administration to move forward on NAFTA. Despite efforts by Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and National Trade Council Director Peter Navarro to trade agenda, Congress insisted that Lighthizer be confirmed before continuing fast-track negotiations, according to White House sources. I would call it a slow track to hell, a White House senior aide said in an interview with Breitbart News, blaming Republicans opposed to renegotiating trade deals and Democrats eager to agenda. The administration still has to formally notify Congress of its intentions to renegotiate NAFTA waiting period. Trump shared his frustrations in an interview with The Economist, pointing out that even though Mexico and Canada were ready to renegotiate NAFTA, his negotiator wasn't confirmed. Here you have two people calling saying, can we negotiate? And I have to wait for 100 days, Trump said. I don't know what 100 days is going to be like. Senators John McCain, Ben Sasse, and Cory Gardner voted against Lighthizer, Trump's trade agenda. Unfortunately, your confirmation process has failed to reassure us the North American Free Trade Agreement positive economic benefits to our respective states and the nation as a whole, wrote in a joint statement expressing their decision to vote against Lighthizer. I'm afraid his policies could hurt Colorado's farmers and ranchers, Gardner explained after his vote, citing Lighthizer's views on trade. Divisions on trade extend to the Financial Times, as some of the president's economic advisors want to carefully process. Others favor a more dramatic approach, citing Trump's campaign populist rhetoric against NAFTA. Were compounded by the news that Trump was considering pulling out of NAFTA altogether, setting defenders of the trade deal scrambling to convince him otherwise. Although he ultimately agreed to renegotiate the deal rather than terminate it, Trump indicated that he seriously considered it. He said to the Economist, this wasn't a game I was playing. I wasn't playing chess or poker or anything else, he said. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, North Carolina vote integrity law falls as Supreme Court denies Republican appeal. Victory for opponents of strong election integrity laws, the Supreme Court has turned down an appeal from North Carolina's Republican leaders and let stand a decision that struck down their 2013 law that required voters they are who they say they are, like they are required to do in banks and airports. The Fourth Circuit Court, which swung from ideologically conservative-leaning liberal during the Obama administration, had branded the law as racially biased. Lawmakers had targeted black voters with almost surgical precision. The law bemoaned the weakening of the state's election reliability. North Carolina voters are the real losers in today's Supreme Court decision not to take up the case, said J. Christian Adams, president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Took action in 2013 immediately after the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 vote, of the Historic Voting Rights Act that requires some states, including North Carolina, to get federal approval before altering their voting laws. The measure made 5 changes, including limiting early voting days but increasing voting hours, which had been used more often by African American voters, and by requiring registered voters to show one of several photo ID cards at the polls. Despite the law's provision for many identification options, the court alleged the state had chosen the types of photo IDs that were less likely to be held by African Americans. The court also criticized the elimination of provisional ballots cast in voters' wrong precincts and the registration of 16 and 17-year-olds who were not yet eligible to vote. Democrats had imposed extreme liberalization of the state's election laws when they controlled both the General Assembly and the governorship throughout the 1990s and 2000s. In 2016, McCrory, a Republican, slammed the decision and lodged an appeal with the Supreme Court last year. 4 of the High Court's conservative justices had signaled they were prepared to block the lower court ruling and revive the law. A 5th vote to the vacancy left by the death of Justice Anton Scalia. But the situation changed in November when the state's voters ousted McCrory and narrowly elected Democrat Roy Cooper. The state's Attorney General Josh Stein, also a Democrat, recently told the High Court they did not wish to appeal the lower court's ruling. At the same time, the GOP-controlled legislature said it did wish to have the appeal heard. After considering the issue for several weeks, the Supreme Court announced Monday it would not hear the case. Given the blizzard of filings over who is and who is not authorized to seek review in this court under North Carolina law, it is important to recall our frequent admonition or admonition that the denial of a writ of certiorari imports no expression of opinion upon the merits of the case, Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. said. Action sets no legal precedent, but it likely ends the litigation over the North Carolina law. It is unconscionable that Roy Cooper and Josh Stein, who ignored state law and flouted their conflicts of interest to kill voter ID in North Carolina, have now caused the vast majority of voters who support voter ID to be denied their day in court. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger and the House Speaker Tim Moore in a joint statement. Despite early voting changes under the now banished law, early in the Tar Heel state set a new record in 2016 with more than 3 million voting during the 17-day in the general election. For all the complaining that the law was an attempt to depress minority Democrat voters, the evidence showed otherwise. 42% of early voters were registered Democrats, 32% registered Republicans, and 26% were unaffiliated voters. Early voting turnout was similarly strong in the North Carolina primaries. While the court noted that the internal politics after the election imperiled the case, the fact remains that hundreds of examples of fraud were confirmed by North Carolina officials in 2016, many of which could have been prevented by the ID package, Adams said. Advocates hailed the demise of the North Carolina law. An ugly chapter in voter suppression is finally closing, said Dale Ho, director of the ACLU's Voting Rights Project. The Supreme Court has decided to allow the Fourth Circuit's ruling to stand, confirming that the nation has no place in our democracy and elections, said Allison Riggs with the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. This ruling sends a strong message that lawmakers in North Carolina should stop enacting laws that discriminate based on race. Berger and Moore took Chief Justice Roberts' statement to heart and vowed to pursue a voter ID law in North Carolina. Tar Heel voters and people representing them can launch a new voter ID reform effort today, Adams said. The next article that I have for you, it's off of Liberty Headlines. It says lawmakers want Sessions to go after Lois Lerner's targeting of Tea Party. Congressmen are asking Attorney General Jeff Sessions to re-examine the case of IRS Division Chief Lois Lerner. We believe that she targeted people based on their political philosophy, which is a crime. And secondly, we believe that she has lied to the Inspector General when that was being investigated. Representative Peter Roskam, Republican of Illinois, told the Daily Signal in a phone interview. IRS Lerner reportedly targeted Tea Party groups. Lerner admitted that the agency put additional scrutiny into the applications for nonprofit tax status of conservative and Tea Party groups, according to NPR. Roskam, who is chairman of the Ways and Means Tax Policy Subcommittee, wrote a letter in April with Representative Kevin Brady, Republican of Texas, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, asking Sessions to reopen Lerner's case for investigation. We think it is important that the Justice Department thoroughly review it because, in our view, the Obama administration was dismissive, Roskam told the Daily Signal. They just dismissed it out of hand and never took it seriously, which is a mistake. In 2014, the House Ways and Means Committee sent a letter to President Barack Obama's Department of Justice detailing the findings of their investigation of Lerner. Obama's Department of Justice held a 2-year investigation into Lerner's case, but closed it on October the 23rd of 2015 with no charges. The April 2017 letter states that the House Ways and Means Committee found that Lerner used her position to improperly influence IRS action against conservative organizations, denying those groups due process and equal protection rights under the law. The findings of the committee's investigation show that Lerner impeded official investigations by providing misleading statements in response to questions from the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. Lerner may also have potentially leaked private taxpayer information by using her personal email on the job, according to the 2017 letter. In a 2014 interview, Lerner told Politico, "I didn't do anything wrong. I'm proud of my career and the job I did for this country," she added. Jay Sekulow, American Center for Law and Justice, a legal and legislative organization which seeks to promote religious and constitutional freedoms, told the Daily Signal a second look must be taken. "I think it was pretty clear that the administration was going to do everything it could. Obama administration was going to do everything it could to keep the whole IRS scandal under wraps," Sekulow said. So for the Department of Justice under President Obama to go after Lois Lerner would have created a bad scenario for their position. Rockham said he cannot speak to the procedure of how the Department of Justice may act if they chose to reopen Lerner's case, but that he is hopeful that Lerner will be brought to justice. A senior official at the Department of Justice told Daily Signal that the department received a letter and are reviewing it. Double jeopardy, a second prosecution for the same offense, would not apply in Lerner's case. Sekulow said in a statement provided to the Daily Signal, as Lerner has not yet been charged with the crime. Additionally, Sekulow said statute of limitations, which dictates when illegal action can be taken, could begin to apply the longer the Department of Justice waits to reopen an investigation and potentially charge Lerner, adding, "Prosecution for many federal crimes is 5 years from the commitment of the offense. However, the clock does not begin to run until the crime has been completed." Arguably here, the targeting is still ongoing under the exact scheme that Lerner designed and intentionally implemented. Brady said justice might be brought to Lerner's case with new leadership. Our committee found troubling evidence that Lois Lerner willfully deceived the American people and abused her IRS authority to discriminate against taxpayers for their political beliefs, Brady said in a statement provided to the Daily Signal. With new administration, one that hasn't issued, these allegations deserve a fresh look. The next article is off of Gateway Pundit. As FBI agents furious with Comey's ready to come forward, they are going to talk. Comey's firing will start the healing process for the entire Bureau, as many agents are furious with his handling of the Hillary Clinton email scandal and how he didn't suggest the Justice Department prosecute her over her mishandling of classified information. These FBI agents are ready to talk now that Comey has been fired. The Daily Caller has this exclusive scoop saying this is a textbook case where a grand jury should have convened but was not. That is appalling. An FBI specialist or special agent who has worked public corruption in criminal cases said of the decision in the office and don't know how Comey can keep going. The agent was also surprised that the Bureau did not bother to search Clinton's house during the investigation. "We didn't search her house. We always search the house. The search should not have been for private electronics, which contained classified material, but even for printouts of such material," he said. "There should have been a complete search of their residence," the agent pointed out. Seize devices is unbelievable. The FBI even seizes devices that had been set on fire. Another special agent for the Bureau that worked counterterrorism in criminal cases said he is offended by Comey saying "we" and "I've been an investigator." The idea that the Clinton email case didn't go to grand jury is ridiculous. D.C. Attorney Joe DeGeneva, more FBI agents will be talking about the problems of the Bureau and specifically the handling of the Clinton case by Comey when Congress comes back into session and decides to force them to testify by subpoena. People are starting to talk, and they're calling their former friends outside the Bureau asking for help. We are asked today to provide legal representation to people inside the Bureau and agreed to do so to former agents who want to come forward and talk. Comey thought this was going to go away. The most important thing of all is that the agents have decided that they're going to talk. Comey is arguably the most corrupt FBI director to ever serve. He brought shame to the Bureau, and the men and women who serve with integrity should come forward to tell their side of the story. Grab some popcorn, because this is going to be a wild ride as more people expose this web of deceit. The next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Islamic group terrified jury will learn of its radical ties. Council on American Islamic Relations sued the investigators being behind a daring and undercover operation that turned up evidence confirming the organization's ties to Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and violent Islamic supremacism. Now, as its case finally heads to trial, CAIR is trying to block the defendants from presenting that evidence and other damaging information to a jury. Last Wednesday, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. delayed a pretrial hearing scheduled for May the 15th to allow more time to address a motion by CAIR to disallow evidence it described as anti-Muslim bias. CAIR is terrified that a jury will learn the truth about its pro-Hamas founding and leaders, said attorney Daniel Horowitz. He represents David Gubotz, a co-author of the book that published evidence Muslim Mafia Inside the Secret Underworld That's Conspiring to Islamicize America, and his son, Chris Gubotz, who conducted the investigation as a CAIR intern. During his internship, Chris Gubotz wore a recorder on his clothing to capture video and audio of his activities. He gathered some 12,000 pages of documents headed for a shredder that held evidence of crimes committed by CAIR, including violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, giving material support to terrorist organizations and providing fraudulent legal services. But CAIR filed suit alleging, among other claims, violations of the Federal and District of Columbia Wiretap Acts and Stored Communications Act. In the complaint, however, CAIR has never defended itself against the actual claims of the book, which documents the organization's founding as a front group in the United States for Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. Horowitz told WND the evidence of CAIR's origin and character is at the very core of our defense. You can't violate the rights of a criminal organization by exposing their violent underbelly, he said, noting that Hamas is a recognized terror organization throughout the world. We are now going to have the opportunity to show the judge that our allegations against CAIR are based upon hard-proven facts, Horowitz said. Up until now, we've had to endure CAIR's constant cries of bigotry every time we have opposed them on this case. Judge Colleen Collar-Coatley of the D.C. Circuit Court said in her order Wednesday that additional briefings are necessary to resolve the matter on whether the evidence regarding CAIR's background and the character can be admitted. Horowitz noted he has a recording of CAIR's founder saying he prefers Hamas to the PLO. When the jury hears that, they're not going to find wrongdoing by our clients who exposed them, he said. After naming the in a lawsuit, CAIR added the Washington, D.C. think tank Center for Security Policy and 3 of its employees for their part in commissioning a documentary about CAIR. Also added was attorney David Yerushalami and his nonprofit group, SANE. which campaigns against the advance of Islamic law or Sharia. Anti-Muslim bias. A legal briefing responded to CAR's motion to disallow evidence of its origin and character, noted the group has made numerous accusations of anti-Muslim bias on part of the Gabaz defendants and their counsel. CAR's motion stated, for years, defendants have promulgated and endorsed the mistaken belief that CAR is a terrorist organization and Muslim Brotherhood front group. These allegations are blatant conspiracy theories intended to push defendants' anti-Muslim agendas. The reply brief says the defendants agree that the anti-Muslim bias should not be part of the defense and that persons of all religions should have equal access to fair treatment and justice in the courts. However, it argues fact-based evidence that is relevant to contested issues should not be excluded simply because CAR labeled such criticism anti-Muslim. The brief notes that the criticisms raised by the defendants have been raised by others, including prominent news sources, a Democratic senator, and federal judges. It cites 2007 New York Times story about CAR that states in the opening paragraph, with violence across the Middle East fixing Islam smack at the center of the American political debate, an organization partly financed by donors closely identified with wealthy Persian Gulf governments has emerged as the most vocal advocate for American Muslims and an object of wide suspicion. The article describes how Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat of California, canceled an award she intended to present to CAR and canceled a meeting set with the organization. Boxer commented, "There are things there I don't want to be associated with." As an exhibit by the defense is a 2014 Washington Post article on the designation of CAR as a terrorist organization by the United Arab Emirates, a Muslim country. It cites, in addition, the FBI's suspension of contract with CAR after the group was named an unindicted co-conspirator in the trial of a sister Muslim Brotherhood organization that funded Hamas, the Holy Land Foundation in Texas. The case demonstrated CAR and its founders were part of a group set up by the Muslim Brotherhood to support Hamas. Documented meetings with extremists include a 2009 visit by CAR's executive director, Nihad Awad, with Muammar Gaddafi to solicit funds from Gaddafi or Sirf. CAR's true nature. CAR contends that Chris Gabaz had a fiduciary duty, a relationship of trust, to manage or protect property as an intern, not to publish the CAR documents. But the Gabaz's legal counsel argues the genuine civil rights organization and a person purporting to share its ideals is more likely to establish a fiduciary relationship than if CAR is a criminal organization which used its intern program as part of the fake civil rights persona. CAR also argues for its expectation of privacy, but the defendants reason that if CAR was regularly engaged in unlawful conduct, it is logical for a jury to conclude that it would conduct its criminal activities in an area that was not easily accessible to an intern. The quasi-public office is likely not where the illicit activities were planned. Entering evidence of criminal activity by CAR, the defendants argue, also is relevant for the ability of witnesses who's personally established the civil rights facade and who personally engage in activity that is unlawful. FBI wiretap evidence from the Holy Land case showed CAR Chief Awad was at an October 1993 meeting of Hamas leaders and activists in Philadelphia. CAR, according to the evidence, was born out of a need to give a media twinkle to the Muslim leaders' agenda of supporting violent jihad abroad while slowly institutionalizing Islamic law in the U.S. Next article that I have for you is off of Breitbart, and it says GOP flips Obama-era regulations, claims boon to economy. Score, Republicans 14, Barack Obama's last-minute regulations 1. Congressional Republicans anxious to show voters that they can get something done are hailing their reversal of more than a dozen Obama-era regulations on guns, the internet, and the environment. Over a few months, lawmakers used an obscure legislative rule to ram through changes that will have far-reaching implications for the coal industry, broadband customers, hunters, and women seeking health care at the Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. For scuttling the rules that Democrat Obama imposed during his final months in office was last Thursday. The 1996 Congressional Review Act had given Republicans the power to make the changes with a simple majority within a set time, while the rest of Washington focused on the furor over President Donald Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey. Republicans were celebrating their effort to reverse the rules, arguing that it would boost the economy and make it easier for businesses to operate. I'm almost speechless when I think about the success, said Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma. Senators pointed out that Congress had only once before used legislative tools stemming from the Congressional Review Act to quash a regulation until this year. In all, the GOP was able to reverse 14 regulations that had or will get Trump's signature. Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader of the Senate, argued that overturning the rules passed at the end of the Obama administration hardly constituted an agenda. Bragging about these highlights how little else they have accomplished legislatively, Schumer said. Republicans have a long way to go in their effort to repeal and replace the health care law, cut taxes, and boost infrastructure spending, all Trump's priorities. Still, the GOP made clear soon after the election victories in November that one of the first orders of business would be to go after Obama administration rules. It has had strong backing from business groups such as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Rifle Association, and prominent anti-abortion groups, all key constituencies that generally back Republican candidates. The chamber endorsed 8 of the 14 repeal resolutions that Congress passed. Still, one awaits the president's signature before it can become law. Republicans reversed Obama's rules that enhanced protections for waterways near coal mines, required contractors to dispose violation of 14 federal labor laws for previous 3 years when bidding on contracts, and imposed tight restrictions companies such as Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast could do with their customers' personal data. Neil Bradley, a senior vice president at the chamber, said that when it comes to slow economic growth, it's difficult to say. This regulation is the culprit, but collectively, that's what happens. Together, they affected a pretty broad base of the business community, Bradley said. Democrats overwhelmingly voted against most of the regulatory repeals. Republicans generally supported them, with Vice President Mike Pence casting the tie-breaking vote to allow states to deny federal family planning money to Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. That reversed a rule Obama issued in his last week in office. While many of the actions were designed to help businesses, others addressed social issues, including the repeal of a regulation designed to keep guns out of the hands of certain mentally disabled people. The NRA, as well as advocacy groups for the disabled and the ACLU, weighed in. They said it was discriminatory for the Social Security Administration to forward the names of certain beneficiaries to the instant background check system based on a mental disability and having a third party manage their benefits. Democrats and environmentalists scored one victory last week. Senate Republicans failed to overturn a rule that would have forced energy companies to capture more of the methane that's burned off or flared at drilling sites. Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, said he considered the rule erroneous, but undoing it would have prevented the Bureau of Land Management from issuing a similar rule in the future. McCain, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and Senator Susan Collins of Maine joined Democrats on the vote. GOP leaders opted not to bring a couple dozen other repeal resolutions up for a vote. including ones that would have blocked a rule designed to protect funds on prepaid debit cards in case of fraud and unauthorized use. Still, the 14 victories gave Republicans a chance to crow. In just a few short months, we have turned a significant corner from how things operated under the Obama administration, said Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky. Instead of going around Congress to push through regulations, the president is working with us to ease the burden. For you this morning, if you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. That way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.